The IDF just released footage that shows Hamas tunnels directly connected to hospitals where they not only operate, but keep hostages. The truth is revealed. The Palestinians are legitimately being held hostage. Now, through these episodes of covering the Palestinian-Israel conflict, we have seen a lot of comments equating Palestinians with Hamas. And we get it. The first thought may be, yeah, but they elected Hamas as their own government, so shouldn't they shoulder the responsibility? Doesn't that mean that they support them? Even we and I debated this very question. And today, we hope that you can gain a new perspective from these two men who are about to speak today and learn that people are not all monolithic. They don't all think the same, yo. And I dare you to try and hold back your tears on this one, because this is going to be heavy. First up is Aziz Abu, who is a Palestinian journalist, politician, and a peace activist. And he sat down with Forbes for a very revealing interview and starts out with showing exactly how Hamas rose into power in Palestine.
With the Palestinian people, it's a little tricky because the Palestinian Authority is known to be extremely corrupt. And a lot of people back in 2006 voted for Hamas because they were hoping for something less corrupt. That's not necessarily what ended up happening. With the lack of political progress in the West Bank and with Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas being unable to really deliver on any of the promises he gave Palestinians, a lot of people turned toward Hamas. And in some ways, that's why Hamas got some support for its action this week, as gruesome and as horrific they are. They got some support because some people at least feel, well, there hasn't been any move through peaceful means, so the heck with it. That's some of the mindset.
So are you saying some people in Palestine are supporting Hamas and these attacks? What are other people saying? Is there anyone there who is saying this was heinous, this was horrible, denouncing these attacks?
Absolutely. I'm Palestinian, and I think these were heinous, horrible, awful. There's no justification for killing innocent civilian people. And I can assure you, I'm not the only one. I've talked to friends, I've talked to people I know who also feel the same way, who are heartbroken. Look, many of the people who've been killed are people who work with us, people who are pro even Palestinian rights, people who are out protesting with Palestinians, people who one of the hostages I know personally whose work, I think worked for Palestinians more than some of our politicians. So it's, to me, crazy to think that attacking civilians, going into people's homes, killing people in their homes, taking civilians, people in their 70s and 80s, hostages in Gaza as an act of resistance. I don't believe it's an act of resistance, and I think a lot of people don't. But there are people who are lost hope, and I think when people lose hope, they lose vision. They lost hope, they lost sight, and they look at what happened as, well, we living through hell, so now Israel lives it through hell. And this mindset that if I'm suffering, I'm gonna make you suffer, that's my victory. It makes me feel better if I make you suffer. It's an awful thing. And unfortunately now, as you read the news, you read social media, is how everyone seems to be thinking. We need to make the other side suffer more. That is no victory. There is no victory in death. There is no victory in civilians.
Understanding the Palestinian situation seems to involve navigating a very complex history. And so far, it seems that people had to make some very tough choices. Some condemning Hamas secretly, but going against what they may believe in order to survive. And Aziz is about to go into detail the power that Hamas holds over the Palestinian people.
Is this feeling of loss of hope, is that what made Hamas so powerful? And can you describe for us just how powerful Hamas is?
I think Hamas became powerful. Yeah, partially it's the lack of hope, feeling very helpless, feeling there is no avenue of political development, there is no avenue of a peace agreement. And then Hamas filled a vacuum. The Palestinian Authority, the Fatah, the other political parties have not been able to fill that vacuum of basically through corruption, through lack of leadership. Look, the average age of a Palestinian leader in the West Bank, from Fatah and from the PA, is in their 70s. Most of Palestinians are under 35 years old. Over 70% of the population are under 35 years old. Yet our leaders are all in their 70s. That vacuum that has been left, Hamas was able to come in and fill and make promises that in some ways they were able to fill better than Fatah. And it's hard to say it because I do not subscribe to a religious government and their leadership. But when they took over, within a few years, they actually lost popularity and then gained popularity again. And part of that, in every time Israel and Hamas had a conflict in the last 15 years or so, Hamas was able to come after and say, we won the following achievements. They were able to negotiate some kind of victory. Even if there was no victory, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 Palestinians would be dead, but they'll say, we've delivered something on the ground. We have more things able to come into Gaza. We have more money able to come into Gaza. While the Palestinian Authority, through negotiations, have been unable to do that. And that gave so much power to Hamas because the alternative did not exist.
Wow. So it seems Hamas was feeling a large void left in Palestinian society, something that would make them feel like their society is improving, or at least someone to represent them and not exploit them. But by the time they found out what was what, it was too late. Can you guys think of any similar situations, maybe not as extreme as Hamas, that has happened in other countries and societies? But then there is the question of, well, why didn't they fight back? Well, Aziz is about to tell you exactly why.
I hear you saying just how powerful Hamas is. Earlier in this conversation, you did say that some Palestinians are outraged. Has there been any pushback in Palestine to Hamas, especially in the wake of this attack, especially?
In Gaza, look, Hamas is not in charge in the West Bank, so there hasn't been any confrontation or anything in the West Bank at all. But in Gaza, not really. I mean, Hamas, again, isn't a democracy. You don't go out and protest against it because it's just not possible. But also in this time, as Israel has started the bombing campaign in Gaza, very few Palestinians would feel it's the right time to go out and protest. It's not possible as the bombings happen to do that, especially if a lot of people think Hamas is the only one with guns. It's the only one that they see as defending them right now. And this is the crazy aspect of what's happening now is we are in a place where you're forced to believe a lot of people are forced to believe that it's their only hope right now. Hamas is the only defenders for them in Gaza. They're the only ones who are carrying the guns. And even if you don't trust them, even if you hate them, even if you think what they did is a horrific thing, many people there would think, what other alternative do I have? And that makes things even a lot more complicated.
Aziz, before I let you go, I want to ask you how you personally are doing. This must be a very tough time, obviously, to be a peace activist.
It is, and probably much harder than choosing which side I want to care about more. Because if you pro-Palestinian, you sympathizing obviously with the Palestinian cause. If you're pro-Israel, you sympathizing with the Israeli cause. And if you're a peace activist, you have friends on both sides. And so your pain is multiplied. Because if I'm talking to my friends in the West Bank, I'm talking to my family. All my family are in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. They living in complete fear right now. I'm talking to my friends in Gaza who are escaping, terrified. I'm talking to my friends in Israel who are living the biggest nightmare in their lives. I'm terrified for my friends who have missing family members. They're trying to find where they are. Most likely they hostages in Gaza. For friends who lost family members. And so you're trying to take the pain of both the Israelis and the Palestinians and absorb both of it and live with both of it and understand both perspectives, understand when your Israeli friends are angry and they can't comprehend how could you talk about Gaza right now, because in their mind, but what about my pain? And my friends in Gaza thinking I'm completely a traitor because how am I able to sympathize with the Israelis' pain, with the people who've lost their lives in Israel. So it's very difficult, but I also think this is exactly what we need right now. This is the time to stand up and say there is an alternative. Hate isn't the only path. I truly believe, and this is how I think of my Israeli friends, I think of my Palestinian friends. I truly believe that this us versus them tribalism is absolutely nonsense and it's stupid. I do not see my Israeli friends as the other. I don't see them as the them. I don't see them as the enemy. I think if we are going to divide things into us and them, it's us, those of us, Israelis and Palestinians, who are working hand in hand, working together, shoulder next to shoulder, marching for peace, for coexistence, for justice, and those who are not there yet. And our hope is to try to convince as many of our own society, as many of our own people, that the other path, the path that includes bloodshed, is going to make all of our lives miserable, is going to hurt our families, our friends. I've been there. I didn't tell you that yet, but my brother was in this conflict. My brother was killed when I was 10 years old. And so I know the pain of losing somebody. And I don't want somebody else to have it. Not an Israeli, not a Palestinian, not in Gaza, not in Israel, not in Jerusalem. It is not worth it for a moment of feeling, oh, I can get my revenge to do that. It is just not worth it.
This interview was quite the eye-opener. Aziz shed some light on the complexities in Palestine, explaining how Hamas, despite its criticism, is perceived by some as the only defense in the face of Israel's bombings. These people are desperate, and his personal struggle as a peace activist, torn between Israeli and Palestinian friends, adds a poignant layer as well. His underscoring for the urgent need for alternatives to hate is something that will resonate even greater in our next interview. And prepare yourself, because this one is a tearjerker. In a heart-wrenching interview, we meet a Palestinian refugee who rose above all odds and became a Harvard graduate, 5-time Nobel Peace Prize nominated doctor. And let me tell you, the toll of this conflict is deeply personal for him, with numerous relatives already fallen victim to the violence, adding to that his uncertainty of the fate of his remaining loved ones. This doctor will make a poignant plea for a human-to-human conversation.
You were raised in the Jabali refugee camp, and a lot of your relatives have already been killed since October the 7th there.
Yes.
In these airstrikes, but also you've told me that right now, there are ongoing attacks.
Yes, they are there in Jabalia camp, living, staying there. They are alive now. I don't know after we finish if they will be alive to talk to them or not. But it's important because I want to tell you, let us talk, a man to a man. Do you have children?
Yes.
So, a father to a father, a human to human. You know, once the apple fell down, we discovered the gravity. So let us today discover the humanity and the truth. Because the truth is important based on evidence. Jesus said, seek the truth, and the truth sets you free. And I hope all to be free today from this meeting, and to be human, and to behave as a human, and to advocate only and just only for humanity.
How many members of your family have been lost since October the 7th?
About 25. October 7th, I found at my sister's house, where my brothers and nieces were there, and this is all the members of the family who were.
Now, we can't show all of this because there are some very gruesome images, but I encourage you guys to watch the original interview in its entirety, linked down below. And the daughter he's about to talk about next was actually deleted by a tank right in front of him, along with his niece.
These are all your members of your family?
Of the family on the 7th. This is my daughter Bisan, who was killed 16th of January 2009, who said to meet violence with violence doesn't solve any problem. There is an alternative way. It's not by action and reaction. It's by being a human and behaving and thinking of others. This is Mayar and Aya. Even my niece, she named her daughter Aya after my daughter. Aya was killed also. To be advocate for human, I sent them to peace camps. And she said to me...
With Israelis.
So the camp the doctor is referring to is known as Seeds of Peace, a transformative nonprofit initiative founded in 1993 in the USA. It dedicates itself to breaking down barriers and fostering peace, bringing together teenagers from conflict regions all over the world, particularly the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Through facilitated dialogue, team building, and workshops, this camp actually cultivates empathy and understanding. And they have one specialty, the relationship between Israel and Palestine.
With the Israelis, and she said to me, I found how similar are we. We are similar, but we need to be equal. We need to be free. We need to appreciate the dignity, the freedom of all. I want to ask you, does the life of the Palestinians matter as equal to the Israelis or not?
Yes.
Does the freedom of the Palestinians matter as the freedom of the Israelis?
Yes.
And that's what always I advocated for. I worked at the hospital when I deliver a baby, the newborn baby. The cry of the newborn baby is a cry of hope, cry of life. But now we are crying blood. And even October 7th proved, because we tried it many times, military means and wars, it's a futile. It's a waste of time and lives. This can't be solved with the military means. It's only by political and diplomatic means acknowledging the rights of all to live side by side as equal. And that's the only way, without leaving anyone behind.
Your entire life has been ravaged by this conflict, from when you were a baby to now. And you've lost so many members of your family. And you're losing them as we speak, probably, horrifically, in this camp that you grew up in. It's like this vicious circle that never ends. How do we end it?
Yeah, we need to understand the root causes of the problem. The Palestinian people and the Israeli people. And I described it. We are like conjoined twins. We have no other way than to live together. And when we speak about peace, and the people, they talk about peace, peace is not just a word. Peace is a way of life that we believe in it. And there are, between whom we want peace. Peace is a relationship between me and you. And there are certain requirements for peace. We need justice, equality, freedom.
Human rights, right? Equal
yes,
rights.
Equal rights. Then peace will be a consequence of that.
Wow. The stark reality of the toll of this conflict was made very clear with these two. The doctor and the journalist both have lost family members, emphasizing how profound and personal this conflict is. And after everything they've experienced, they still manage to have empathy and love for the Israeli people. Their only response to the tragedies that have occurred in their lives is a plea for equality, a plea for freedom, and most importantly, a plea for peace. They envision a future where all can live side by side as equals without leaving anyone behind. This was more than just an interview. And having listened to these two men talk, I'm curious to know if or how that shifts your perspective on this conflict. So leave that in the comments down below. Keep it civil, like, subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace.